Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight's journey will take us into something that flows through your veins, sings in the rainfall, and shaped the earth long before you were born. We're exploring the story of water, from ancient oceans to the glass in your hand. A calm, immersive journey through space, time, geology, biology, and the soft, everyday rituals of life. Water is a simple molecule with an extraordinary tale. It is the shape of rivers and the memory of stars. But before you settle in and get cozy, I'd love if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Only if you truly find these quiet explorations enjoyable. And when you're ready, leave a comment to let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always such a joy to see all the places we gather from, each in our own little slice of time. Now feel free to dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a soft background hum, and let's gently begin our journey into water's story together. And if your mind begins to wander, that's perfectly fine. Let it drift. We'll still be here, quietly unfolding the story. Take a slow breath in, and now out. Feel the air in your lungs. A part of that too is water vapor, suspended droplets, rising and falling with each breath. The soft steam from your tea, the shimmer in a dewdrop on the grass, the way the mirror fogs up when you brush your teeth before bed. Water is always with you, even when you can't see it. But it wasn't always here. Tonight, we'll follow water's journey, not just through rivers and pipes, but through epochs and orbits, volcanoes and veins, from the icy grains of ancient comets to the secret aquifers beneath your feet, from the hiss of volcanic steam to the cool pour from a kitchen faucet. It's a journey of transformation over billions of years and across unimaginable distances. We'll begin with the stars, because before there was an ocean, there were only clouds of dust, fragments of hydrogen and silence. Water did not begin on Earth. It began before Earth, when the universe was still young, still folding itself into galaxies. The hydrogen in every drop of water formed in the first few minutes after the Big Bang. The oxygen forged in the hearts of dying stars, supernovae that scattered their rich glowing ashes into the interstellar night. When the two met, hydrogen and oxygen, they danced, they bonded, and in that meeting, in that invisible embrace, water was born. Some of those molecules remained adrift in the cold of space. Others froze onto rocks, clung to comets, or drifted in nebulae until gravity sculpted new worlds. And some, through slow collisions and cosmic patience, found their way here, to Earth, to you. And now that very water moves in your blood, lines your eyes, and rests in the glass beside your bed. Imagine that. A molecule made from stars now perched on your nightstand. It's humbling, isn't it? To think that the water running from your tap is older than the mountains, older than bones, older than memory. It is both ancient and immediate, vast and personal. We'll trace that story gently. No need to hurry. We'll drift through ancient oceans where strange creatures once bloomed. We'll ride the slow arc of a raindrop falling through cloud and leaf. We'll wander through pipes, aquifers and tea kettles, through your breath, your tears, and the quiet rhythms of life. Water doesn't boast. It doesn't announce itself, but it connects all things. It shaped the landscapes we walk on. It gave birth to life, and it quietly sustains us every single day. This is the story of water. Let's begin. Long before oceans shimmered under the sun, long before clouds drifted across blue skies, even before Earth had a name or a shape, there was water. Not in lakes, not in rivers, not in any familiar form, but scattered across the universe in its smallest building blocks. Hydrogen and oxygen. Simplicity itself. Let's begin here. In the beginning there was heat. A pulse of energy so vast it still echoes across space in silent radiation. In the first few minutes after the Big Bang, as the universe expanded and cooled, the very first atoms formed. Almost all of them were hydrogen, the lightest, simplest element, a single proton and a single electron. Hydrogen was everywhere. It was the breath of the early cosmos. But water was not yet possible. For that, the universe would need something heavier, something born in fire. And so the stars began. It took hundreds of millions of years, but eventually gravity gathered clouds of hydrogen into dense cores. Pressure built, heat surged, and the first stars ignited, giant furnaces blazing against the black. Inside those stars, new elements were forged. Hydrogen fused into helium, helium into carbon, and deeper still, under immense pressure, carbon gave way to oxygen. One of the key players in our story. But stars are not immortal. The largest among them ended their lives in spectacular fashion. Supernovae, exploding outward and scattering their newly created elements into space. A kind of cosmic generosity. That's where oxygen came from. The breath of stars hurled into the galaxy. So now we have hydrogen from the beginning and oxygen from dying stars. Two puzzle pieces adrift, but they didn't immediately find each other. Across vast interstellar clouds, cold, dusty regions where light barely travels, these elements drifted, sometimes attaching to grains of cosmic dust. In the frigid dark, far from any sun, a reaction began. One atom of oxygen joined with two atoms of hydrogen, and in the silence of space, water was born. Tiny molecules clinging to frozen dust. Nothing dramatic, no storms, no thunderclaps, just quiet chemistry on the outskirts of creation. Most of this water remained locked in ice or frozen inside comets, crusted onto asteroid surfaces, or hidden deep within interstellar clouds. Some evaporated under starlight, some remained preserved in ancient rock. But over time, something beautiful happened. These icy particles began to gather, pulled by gravity, tugged into newborn solar systems, woven into the building blocks of planets, including our own. You see, Earth did not begin as a wet world. It was hot, violent and dry. But as it cooled and as its surface began to harden, water found its way in. Some of it released from deep within the Earth itself, and some of it delivered by spaceborne messengers, comets and asteroids carrying frozen reservoirs of ancient water. But that part comes later. For now, it's enough to pause and marvel at the simple truth that water in your glass began in stars, the oxygen in every droplet was forged in fire. The hydrogen was there at the very beginning, and long before it pooled in oceans or danced in raindrops, it drifted in space, quiet, cold and full of potential. Even now, when you take a sip of water, you're not just quenching your thirst, you're holding a piece of the cosmos, something older than Earth itself, something that's been travelling for eons just to reach you. Stardust and simplicity, that's where water's story begins. Let's imagine the early Earth. Not the world, you know, but a newborn planet still wrapped in fire and chaos. There are no oceans yet, no rivers, no rain, just a swirling mix of molten rock, volcanic fury, and an atmosphere thick with carbon dioxide. It is a place of heat, of smoke, of cadence broken only by the slow rumble of planetary formation. And above it, in the vast reaches of the early solar system, icy travellers begin to stir. Comets, asteroids, silent emissaries from the cold edges of creation, carrying a precious cargo, water. Many scientists believe that a significant portion of Earth's water may have arrived this way, not in gentle drops, but in cosmic collisions. When Earth was young, it was bombarded, again and again, by these ancient, ice-laden rocks. Some were small, pebble-sized messengers. Others were larger, carving craters and stirring the ground like spoons in molten soup. And in every impact, they left behind a trace. Frozen fragments of H2O, delivered like ancient letters from the deep past. It's a theory known as exogenous delivery, the idea that water, at least in part, came from beyond the Earth. That the oceans we now take for granted were once scattered through space, tucked away in the bellies of asteroids and the tails of comets. But how do we know this? Science, like water, finds paths where none seem obvious, and in this case the clues lie in the isotopic fingerprints of water itself. Water molecules come in slightly different forms depending on the number of neutrons in their hydrogen atoms. The most common is regular hydrogen, with just one proton. But there's another form, deuterium, which has both a proton and a neutron. The ratio of hydrogen to deuterium in a given sample of water is like a molecular signature. And when scientists compare the deuterium levels in Earth's oceans to those found in different comets and asteroids, they find something curious. Some comets don't match. Their water has too much deuterium, too heavy, but certain carbonaceous chondrite asteroids, some of the oldest rocks in the solar system, have water that closely resembles the water in your glass. It's not a perfect match, but it's close enough to suggest that at least part of Earth's water may have come from these rocky ancient bodies, raining down over millions of years in a quiet cosmic delivery service. Picture that. Not just one comet, but thousands, over eons, slowly building. The oceans drop by icy drop. It's strange, isn't it? To think that something so soft, so essential, so intimately woven into our daily lives may have arrived with the force of impact. That the liquid in your teacup once rode through the vacuum of space, frozen solid, waiting for a chance to melt into something more. And perhaps even more remarkable, those same comets and asteroids still exist. They still drift through our solar system, carrying frozen records of what the early universe was like. Some have tails that glimmer when they approach the sun, shedding ice and dust into glowing trails. Others remain hidden in shadow, orbiting quietly beyond Neptune, beyond Pluto in the distant Kuiper belt. And they still carry water, still untouched, still waiting. Even now, some scientists believe we might one day mine these ancient bodies, harvesting their ice to fuel future space missions, to quench the thirst of astronauts, or to build distant outposts among the stars. Water again, as traveller, as companion, as a bridge between worlds. But for now, let's return to Earth. By the time our planet had cooled enough for liquid water to remain on its surface, the contributions from asteroids and comets had likely been absorbed into a growing reservoir, one that would eventually flood valleys, smooth mountains, and create the oceans that cradled life. So the next time you hold a glass of water, think of this. You're holding something older than continents, something that may have once been trapped in the heart of an asteroid, something that crossed the vacuum of space and survived impact with a young, molten planet, only to end up here, in your hands, a gift from comets, a whisper from space, a reminder that the ordinary is often born of the extraordinary. Let's take a quiet step forward in time. The cosmic rain of comets has slowed. The Earth has grown heavier, rounder, quieter. The surface still pulses with heat from within, but something is changing. There is no blue yet, no gentle waves or breezes. But below the surface, pressure builds, and in that pressure something ancient stirs. Water, again, but this time not from the stars, from deep inside the Earth itself. When our planet first formed, it was a violent place, bombarded by meteors, smeared with lava. It spun faster than it does now. Days were shorter. Tides, if they existed, were higher, and beneath its rocky skin, the mantle swirled with molten minerals and volatile gases, hydrogen, carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and water vapour. Lots of it. Trapped inside the planet since its formation, water had been locked away in hot compressed rock. Not liquid, not ice, but vapour and bonded molecules, waiting to be released. And the Earth had just the mechanism for it. Volcanoes. You might picture volcanoes as explosive, fiery mountains. And you'd be right. But in those early days, they were everywhere. The crust was thin, fractured, restless. Geysers of magma erupted across the surface, carrying gases with them. And with every eruption came steam. billowing clouds of water vapour released from deep within the earth. This process is called outgassing. It's not the most elegant word, but it describes one of the most elegant acts of planetary transformation, the birth of an atmosphere, and with it, the conditions for rain. As the planet cooled, the water vapour began to condense. The atmosphere thickened, trapping heat, but slowly the sky began to change. Clouds formed, wisps at first, then heavier, then darker. And one day, though no one was there to witness it, it rained. Not a passing drizzle or a scattered shower, but a rain that lasted for thousands, maybe millions of years. Imagine that. An Earth without land as we know it. Just scorched plains and lava flows. And then the sky opens, the clouds pour out water, the ground hisses, steams, floods. The first great rainfall. A downpour that went on and on, cooling the surface, carving channels, filling hollows. Water collected in low places, forming pools that deepened into lakes. Lakes that spread into seas, seas that merged into oceans. It's hard to picture, but every drop that fell was once hidden inside a rock, carried upward by magma, exhaled by a volcano, and cooled by the breath of a newborn sky. Earth became a planet of rain, and unlike the rains we know today, these early showers didn't just fall on plants or cities or rooftops. They fell on bare rock, raw and unweathered. And slowly, drop by drop, the surface began to change. Minerals dissolved. Erosion began its patient work. Water, in its soft persistence, started carving the planet. That's what water does, quietly, without boast. It transforms. Even now, some of the water you drink may have come from this process. Not all of Earth's water was delivered from Space Force. Some of it came from deep within, released through fire and steam. Two sources intertwined. The Earth, it turns out, is not just a receiver of water, but a source of it too. And if you step outside during a rainstorm, if you tilt your head back and let a few drops fall on your face, you're feeling something ancient. A ritual that has shaped the world since before rivers, before life. The rain that made oceans didn't just fall, it sculpted. And in the next chapter of our story, those oceans will begin to take their place, glimmering under a pale sun, ready to cradle life. But for now, we rest beneath the sound of distant thunder, imagining a world where rain never stopped, and where the Earth's first lullaby was the quiet rhythm of falling water. The rain has fallen, endlessly, softly, powerfully. For thousands of years it drenched the scorched face of the earth, pooled in valleys, filled basins, seeped into cracks. The rocks hissed and steamed. Lava cooled into stone. The chaos of a fiery planet gave way, slowly, hesitantly, to something more familiar. Blue. This is the moment Earth became an ocean planet, not with the neat bordered continents you know today. Those came much later. In this early chapter, land was scattered, fragmented, volcanic. But the water, oh the water, it spread everywhere. A vast, unbroken expanse of shimmering surface stretching horizon to horizon. Imagine looking at Earth from space in those early days. You'd see something extraordinary. No cities, no forests, no ice caps, just a deep planetary sea, a glowing marble wrapped in silver clouds and sapphire skin. And beneath that watery surface, something astonishing was taking shape. The land beneath the sea, the ocean basins, were slowly forming. Earth's crust, cooled and cracked, had begun to divide into tectonic plates, and where those plates pulled apart, molten rock rose from below, creating ridges. Where they collided, they plunged downward, forming trenches. This restless movement sculpted the ocean floor into dramatic patterns. Long mountain ranges stretched beneath the surface. Deep valleys sank into shadow. Volcanic islands rose and fell like flickers of thought in a dreaming mind. The earth was building a home for water, and water in turn was sculpting the earth. Every movement of the tide, every gentle wave against new stone, every current that circled beneath the surface. Water was not passive, it was an artist, a builder, a patient, tireless force shaping the contours of its container. It's easy to overlook, but our oceans are not just deep, they're structured, textured, full of quiet, moving architecture. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a massive underwater mountain chain, runs like a spine along the floor of the Atlantic Ocean. It's longer than any range on land, yet hidden from view, etched by magma, cooled by seawater and constantly growing. Then there's the Mariana Trench in the Pacific, a chasm deeper than Mount Everest is tall. It is not a place of zebents, though it lies in eternal darkness. Water flows even there, pressing into every crevice, carrying whispers of chemistry and time. Even the smoothest beach is born of rough geology, sand ground fine by ancient waves, sediments carried by invisible currents, polished by water that's travelled for ages. Water remembers the shape of things, and the oceans were not only sculptors, they were also mirrors. As they grew, they began to reflect the light of the sun. Earth's atmosphere, still rich in volcanic gases, began to shift. Clouds thickened, carbon dioxide levels slowly fell as it dissolved into the sea. The temperature dropped, the air changed, and with those changes came new colours in the sky, new rhythms in the wind. Water doesn't just shape the land, it shapes the climate. The oceans began to absorb heat by day and release it slowly by night. They became the planet's great thermostats, regulating temperature, moderating storms, and balancing the chaos of the elements. They were not just bodies of water, they were Earth's breath and heartbeat. And though life had not yet arrived, conditions were forming. Beneath the waves, in the darkness of deep-sea vents and the warmth of shallow pools, chemistry stirred. Elements met, energy sparked, and water, once just a carrier of minerals and heat, was preparing to cradle something more delicate, life itself. But that is still to come. For now, picture this. A world wrapped in water, its land masses scattered and bare, its skies streaked with ash and rainbows. A planet in transition, not lifeless, but waiting. Waiting for something to swim, to float, to evolve. Even in its silence, water was preparing the stage. And if you've ever walked along a shoreline at dusk, listening to waves roll in like a slow breath, know this. You're hearing the same rhythm that's been echoing for over 4 billion years. A rhythm that began before life, before continents, before memory. A rhythm born not in sound, but in motion. And it's still playing now, soft and unbroken, like a lullaby beneath the surface. Now, let's pull the lens back once more. You've seen how water arrived on Earth, some from deep within, some from icy visitors from space. You've felt the rain that shaped the oceans and watched the surface transform into a vast blue cradle. But Earth is not alone. Water, it turns out, is not a rare treasure of our planet. It is everywhere, hidden, drifting, frozen, locked away in distant shadows. Even now in the cold corners of the solar system and beyond, water waits. Let's visit some of those places, quietly, gently, as if we're floating through the universe in a slow dream. On the moon, water exists in frozen form, tucked inside craters that never see sunlight. Not much, just thin layers, ice-bound to dust, but enough to whisper that even our closest neighbour holds remnants of this ancient element. On Mars there are traces too. Once Mars may have been wet, a planet with rivers, lakes, maybe even seas. Now much of its water is gone, lost to space or hidden as underground ice, but its fingerprints remain in dried riverbeds and polar caps, in salt streaks that suggest liquid might still flow ever so briefly just beneath the surface. Then there are the icy worlds of the outer solar system. Europa, a moon of Jupiter, is wrapped in a shell of frozen water. Beneath that crust, scientists believe, lies a liquid ocean, kept warm not by sunlight, but by the gravitational stretch and pull from its parent planet. An ocean with more water than all of Earth's combined. Enceladus, Saturn's tiny gleaming moon, has geysers that shoot water vapour into space. Imagine that. A moon with an icy shell, but underneath again, a hidden ocean. One that bubbles up through cracks and vents, releasing its breath into the void. Even distant Pluto, so far from the sun it's wrapped in deep winter year-round, may have once harboured a subsurface sea. And then there are the comets, icy relics from the solar system's birth, still drifting in deep elliptical orbits. When they approach the sun, they release glowing tails of gas and dust. These tails are made in part of water vapour. It is a beautiful irony. The water that helped form planets, now lighting up the darkness in celebration. It's humbling to realise Earth isn't the only world touched by water. We're not even the only blue dot to have held oceans. Water is woven into the fabric of our solar system. It is not Earth's art alone, but Earth is where it has been allowed to sing, and it sings beautifully, but the story doesn't stop with planets and moons. Far beyond, in the dark clouds between stars, known as interstellar molecular clouds, we find water still forming. Astronomers have detected water vapour in regions where stars are being born. Even there, among the gravity-warped chaos of stellar nurseries, tiny water molecules are drifting, waiting perhaps to be part of the next world, the next ocean, the next quiet sip from a glass billions of years from now. Water has been doing this for a very long time. It has no beginning really. It comes from stars, from collision, from chemistry we can barely observe. It slips between molecules, it hides into minerals, it freezes into crystals that can last for ages, and sometimes it flows freely, glimmering under alien skies. When you drink water, when you pause in the middle of the night and lift a glass to your lips, you're not just hydrating, you're participating in a story that began long before humans, before Earth, before sunlight reached this corner of space. You're drinking something older than memory. Water has touched everything. It has been a vapour and a liquid and an ice. It has crossed space. It has shaped mountains. It has pooled in the heart of moons. It has rested in comets for billions of years. It has flooded planets and vanished again. And now, for a moment, it moves through you. And that moment matters. Because water is connection. Across time, across bodies, across worlds. It is the great whisperer, the quiet companion, the molecule that binds star to cell, sky to soil, planet to poem. So as we end this first chapter of our journey, let that thought linger. The water in your body, your glass, your bathtub or kettle, it is not just local. It is cosmic. It is borrowed from ancient places and unknown distances. And like all things that move through time, it carries stories. Some we know, most we never will, but they're still there, flowing softly, always moving, always returning. Now that the oceans are formed, vast, blue and silent, we enter a new chapter. One not written in stone or fire, but in life. Life didn't begin with trees or tigers or even fish. It began in water, not as something you could see with the naked eye, not with limbs or eyes or even cells as we know them today, but in chemistry, in heat, in the soft stirrings of carbon and energy. We sometimes call it the primordial soup, a poetic name for the warm, mineral-rich mixture of molecules that existed in Earth's early oceans. But more precisely, we believe it was a broth of possibility, a liquid laboratory, stirred not by hands but by heat and time, and deep in that ocean, in places where sunlight never touched, something extraordinary was happening. Along the ocean floor, hydrothermal vents, cracks in the Earth's crust, spewed hot, mineral-laden water into the cold darkness. These vents weren't gentle springs, they were roaring chimneys of heat and chemicals, formed where tectonic plates pulled apart. Where the seafloor opened slightly, molten rock surged closer to the surface, heating surrounding water to hundreds of degrees Celsius. And yet, somehow these hostile environments became cradles for life. Even today, life thrives there. Entire ecosystems of worms, crabs, microbes and strange fish here flourish in total darkness, feeding not on sunlight, but on the chemical energy of the Earth itself. It's here that many scientists believe life may have begun, in these hidden underwater cathedrals, where warm water mixed with cold minerals clump together, forming microscopic structures, tiny compartments, like the first whispers of a cell. Here, molecules could concentrate, reactions could repeat, and patterns slowly, unpredictably began to emerge. Water didn't just provide the setting, it was the medium, the mover, the matrix in which everything danced. The earliest building blocks of life, amino acids, lipids, nucleotides, likely floated in these oceans, and with the help of energy from vents, lightning, and perhaps even solar radiation near the surface, they began to combine in new ways. It wasn't a single spark, more like countless tiny experiments running side by side for millions of years. Eventually the first protocells appeared, not truly alive but close, droplets with oily membranes that could trap chemicals, react with their surroundings, and replicate, clumsily at first, then with growing confidence. From this came life, not all at once, not cleanly, but surely. Single-celled organisms were Earth's first inhabitants. Tiny, invisible, but powerful. They fed on chemicals, multiplied, and filled the ocean with possibility. The Earth's quiet water had become something more, a womb for biology. Even now, our cells, your cells, carry traces of this origin. The fluids inside them mimic the composition of ancient seawater. The saltiness of your tears, your sweat, your blood. It is not just a chemical feature. It is a memory, a molecular echo of where we began. And the hydrothermal vents, they were still there, still hot, still bubbling, still supporting strange, ancient forms of life, unchanged for eons. Imagine that. The bottom of the ocean, in the dark silence, the story of life continues, quietly, steadily, as it has for billions of years. No sun, no sound, just heat, chemistry and water. In the beginning, life did not need a sky, it needed water. Now that life has emerged, softly, invisibly, patiently, it begins to learn. Not with thought or intention, but through the quiet logic of chemistry and time. The first living things floated in the sea, surrounded by water on all sides. But they didn't just float, they interacted. Every cell, no matter how simple, needed to control what entered and what left. Nutrients, waste, minerals, energy, all of it passed through the skin of the cell, a barrier not unlike a thin soap bubble. This delicate envelope was more than protection. It was communication, a negotiation between inside and out. It is here that water plays another miraculous role, not just as a birthplace of life, but as a participant in its every moment. Let's pause for a moment and consider this. Nearly every chemical reaction in your body today still takes place in water. Inside every one of your trillions of cells there is a watery environment, a cytoplasm where proteins fold, enzymes act, and DNA unwinds. But long before these complex processes evolved, the earliest cells had to deal with a basic question. How do you survive in a watery world? Enter osmosis, a gentle, persistent flow. Water moving from places of lower solute concentration to places of higher solute concentration, trying always to balance things out. It doesn't rush, doesn't force, it simply moves, quietly equalizing. Osmosis is how water crosses membranes, and membranes, made from simple lipid molecules, naturally form little bubbles when placed in water. These lipid layers can seal themselves into spheres, tiny shelters for the fragile spark of life inside. Even without proteins or machines, these bubbles could let water flow in and out. And that flow, that dance between inside and outside, allowed early life to maintain balance. Too much water and a cell could burst. Too little and it would shrivel. So nature found ways to regulate, to adapt, to keep the inner world just steady enough for life to continue. and once a cell had learned to hold itself together, it began to explore. Early life may have drifted passively in warm coastal shallows, or clung to mineral-rich rocks around vents. But over time, some cells developed primitive tails, flagella, tiny whips that allowed them to swim to follow gradients of light or warmth or food. They weren't thinking, but they were responding. And the water welcomed this movement, because water is kind to motion. It supports, it cushions, it resists just enough to guide, but not enough to harm. A flagellum in water behaves like a paddle in syrup, pushing gently, bending, flicking. This slow locomotion was the first kind of travel. Even now, single-celled organisms move this way. Tiny creatures like Euglena and Paramecium can swim and glide, or even bounce through water, their movements elegant in their simplicity. And every one of them is an echo of those early cells. The story of life is, in so many ways, a story of learning to swim, to find, to move, to respond. Inside these early swimmers, the machinery of life became more organized. Molecules arranged themselves into pathways. Some began to harvest energy from chemicals, others from light. RNA formed, then DNA. The code of life wrote itself, line by line, floating in water. Diffusion, the passive spread of molecules through water, did much of the work. In these tiny cells, there was no need for pumps or blood. Everything moved by drifting. Oxygen flowed in, waste flowed out, and water carried it all, patiently, invisibly. Sometimes it's easy to forget how miraculous this is, that you are even now made of tiny compartments, each one filled with water, each one wrapped in a membrane that knows how to let the right things pass and keep the rest out. You're not just surrounded by water, you are water, shaped into form by the thin walls of cells that learned to float before they ever walked. The first swimmers had no bones, no muscles, no eyes, but they had water, and with water they had motion, and with motion they had direction. From there, evolution had everything it needed. So the next time you watch something drift in a glass of water, a bit of dust, a speck of tea leaf, a swirl of milk, remember, that same quiet, effortless movement once carried the first sparks of life. The cell membrane, the watery core, the pulse of osmosis and diffusion, these are not old relics. They are active parts of you, right now. Billions of years later, your body still remembers the ocean it came from, and every cell still swims. The early cells had learned to hold themselves together. Some had learned to swim, others simply floated, carried by currents they could not see. But something new was waiting to be discovered. Something quiet and immense rippling across the surface of the ocean. Light. Sunlight had always bathed the earth, warming its rocks, stirring its atmosphere. But now, for the first time, something in the water began to notice. To use it. It began with a shimmer, a tiny cluster of molecules inside certain cells that could absorb light and transform it into energy. Photosynthesis. A miracle of chemistry, performed by simple organisms long before plants ever existed. These tiny pioneers were the ancestors of what we now call algae, the green, golden, and red drifters of the sea. They didn't bloom in forests or flower in gardens. They drifted in the top layers of the ocean, where light could reach, and with that light, they transformed the world. Because photosynthesis didn't just feed the cell, it also released something unexpected into the water and air: oxygen. Before this moment, the Earth's atmosphere was almost entirely devoid of it. Life thrived without it, in chemical reactions that worked in the absence of air. But oxygen changed everything. At first, it may have seemed like a waste product, something unimportant, drifting unnoticed. But over time, it began to accumulate. In the oceans, it rusted iron into bands of red and black on the seafloor. In the sky, it slowly built up, changing the chemistry of the entire planet. And all of it came from cells that floated quietly in the sun. Let's pause here for a moment. Imagine you're a molecule of carbon dioxide drifting in warm seawater. A tiny green cell absorbs you, captures sunlight and transforms you into sugar and oxygen. That oxygen slips out of the cell and joins others like it, eventually rising into the atmosphere. You're now part of air, of breath, of the long, slow preparation for lungs that will not appear for billions of years. And all because of algae. Even today, more than half of the world's oxygen is produced not by trees, but by tiny marine organisms, phytoplankton, the descendants of those early photosynthesizers. Every second breath you take owes something to the ocean. But it wasn't just light that shaped early life. There was also motion, rhythm, repetition, tides. The moon, small and silent in the sky, tugged gently on the seas. It still does. The gravitational pull of the moon creates bulges in the ocean, causing tides to rise and fall in a slow, predictable dance. For early life, tides were both challenge and opportunity. Tidal pools warmed and cooled. They filled and emptied. They concentrated nutrients and exposed organisms to air. In these shifting environments, life began to adapt to change, to cycles, to pattern, to contrast. Some cells clung to rocks, others burrowed into mud. A few began to time their activities to the rhythm of the tides, opening during floods, closing during drought. This was the beginning of environmental awareness, of responses shaped not just by chemistry but by timing, sunlight and tide, light and pull. Together they created a world of daily variation, and life responded with invention. Some algae learned to grow in mats, weaving themselves into dense layered communities. Others floated freely, drifting with the currents and blooming in great green clouds visible from space. There was no central brain, no plan, just water, energy and evolution, moving slowly, patiently in endless cycles. It's strange to think that some of the most important transformations in Earth's history came from organisms you can't even see. But these early algae, and the cyanobacteria that preceded them, laid the groundwork for every plant, every forest, every breath of oxygen on Earth. And they did it while drifting in water, gently spun by sunlight and sea. So the next time you sit by the ocean and watch the tide roll in, or notice the light filtering through a glass of water, think of those ancient organisms. They taught the Earth how to breathe. And they did it, not with noise or struggle, but with rhythm, with dance, with light. Let's drift forward again, softly, slowly, through deep time. The oceans, now brimming with microbial life, begin to change, not in a rush, but in a quiet crescendo. After billions of years of single-celled solitude, something begins to stir. Life becomes visible. It doesn't leap. It blossoms in shapes, in shells, in forms that can now be seen, touched and remembered in stone. This is the Cambrian explosion, a period of evolution so sudden and rich that it fills the fossil record like a burst of fireworks underwater. But long before trilobites scuttled and jellyfish pulsed, a quieter architecture had already begun to form. Corals, tiny creatures, not much more than sacs with mouths, began to build homes, not for comfort or decoration, but for protection. Their homes were made of calcium carbonate, a chalky secretion that hardened into skeletons. These structures remained after the coral died, providing a foundation for the next generation. And over time, these remnants stacked, layered and intertwined, until something miraculous appeared. Reefs. Coral reefs are often called the rainforests of the sea, but they're so older, quieter, and far more still. These massive underwater cities house thousands of species, fish, crustaceans, mollusks, and plants, all drawn to the complex shelter and flowing nutrients of the reef. Even now, drifting near a reef is like drifting near a dream. Colour flickers, motion folds in on itself, and water moves through narrow crevices like breath through a flute. But back in the Cambrian, this burst of life extended far beyond corals. Shells appeared, limbs, eyes. Creatures learned to dig, to swim, to chase. The ocean, once a silent soup, became a stage for movement. Life was no longer passive. It interacted. Some creatures floated, like the delicate Anomalocaris, a predator with grasping limbs and paddle-like flippers. Others clung to the seabed, like trilobites, which crawled in armoured rows over the ocean floor. But all of them had something common. They depended on water. Water held them up, carried their waste away, brought them oxygen and nutrients. Water was not just the environment, it was the medium of life itself, shaping every adaptation. And with water came flow. You might think of movement as something chosen, like a fish deciding to swim. But in the ocean, water moves constantly and life moves with it. Currents pull, tides shift, temperature rises and falls. Early life didn't just exist in the ocean, it learned to live with it. Many Cambrian creatures were filter feeders, catching microscopic particles carried by the current. Others were scavengers, picking at detritus that settled from above. Predators used the movement of the water to ambush, to flee, to hunt. The entire food web was suspended in liquid. Even today, the descendants of these creatures carry those lessons. Crabs, anemones, sponges, sea stars, all evolved from ancestors that once floated, crawled, or clung to rocks in ancient seas. And the water hasn't forgotten them. If you watch a coral reef today, you'll see the same choreography. Fish move in and out of coral fingers. Tiny shrimp clean the scales of passing travellers. Plants sway like slow dancers, responding to waves you can't see. It's a living sculpture carved by flow, shaped by need. And coral, that silent builder, continues to stack stone upon stone, creating cities that outlast storms, generations, even civilizations. It's easy to take for granted how life and water grew together, but it's worth remembering. The explosion of life in the Cambrian wouldn't have been possible without water's gentle, endless support. It cushioned fragile bodies, it carried eggs and sperm across distances, it dissolved minerals into nourishment, it absorbed shocks, diluted poisons, and offered a constant, comfortable temperature for the delicate engines of metabolism. Without water, there would be no shellfish, no seaweed, no crabs, no fish. And no you. Because this blossoming of marine life didn't stop at the shore. Eventually, some creatures would begin to explore the edge, the tide pools, the muddy flats, the in-between places where sea meets land, but that's the next story. For now, picture the Cambrian Sea. Shallow, sunlit, teeming, a jellyfish glides above a reef, a trilobite scuttles below, algae wave from the rocks like green hair, and the water holds it all in place. Soft, fluid scaffolding for an entire blooming world. The sea is not just alive, it is life's oldest home. Let's follow the water now as it moves softly, slowly from sea to shore. For billions of years, life remained in the oceans. It floated, swam and crawled beneath the waves, content with the cradle it had known since the beginning. But over time, curiosity crept into evolution. Not conscious curiosity, perhaps, but the kind shaped by chance and need. The shoreline, the meeting place between sea and land, offered new possibilities. Pools that warmed in sunlight, patches of nutrients swept in by tides, protection from predators in the gentle rise and fall of coastal shallows. And as rivers began to form, carving their way through rock and soil, they became pathways inland, bringing water to the driest places and eventually bringing life along with them. You might think of rivers as mere features of geography, lines on a map, dividing one place from another. But rivers are more than that. They're connective tissue, linking oceans to mountains, sky to soil. They carry minerals, sediments, nutrients, and yes, life itself. Over time, certain species began to venture upstream. Some stayed close to estuaries where fresh water met salt in a brackish mix. Others followed the rivers, adapting as the salinity dropped, as the current changed, as the environment shifted. Fresh water is not the same as salt water. It lacks many of the dissolved minerals that early sea life relied upon. Its chemistry is softer, its density different. For organisms accustomed to the predictable rhythm of the sea, fresh water posed a challenge. It required change. But nature is nothing if not inventive. Some species evolved ways to regulate their internal salt levels. Others developed protective skins or shells. Over time, fish like lungfish and coelacanths gained features that hinted at something more. A flexibility, an adaptability that allowed for more than just swimming. They could move, not far, not fast, but enough to drag themselves from pool to pool during droughts, enough to breathe for short periods above water. These weren't true land animals, not yet, but they were something new, the ancestors of amphibians, and as rivers spread across continents, so too did these explorers, creatures shaped by the ocean but no longer bound to it. They followed the water wherever it went, through deltas, floodplains, streams and lakes. They began to spawn in still ponds, to hide among reeds, to leap between raindrops. But even as life moved inward, it never truly left water behind. Every freshwater habitat, no matter how small, echoes with the memory of the sea. The salt content in your blood, the fluid inside your cells, the way your lungs once echoed the shape of gills. And rivers, those moving threads of liquid memory, kept life connected. They still do. Even now in modern times, rivers carry fish to spawn, birds to migrate, seeds to spread. Otters dive through them, beavers shape them, crocodiles lurk beneath their surface, and humans build cities beside them. It's no coincidence that most of the world's great civilizations rose along rivers: the Nile, the Tigris, the Euphrates, the Yangtze, the Indus. These waters offered more than hydration. They offered transport, food, fertile soil, and the soothing rhythm of flowing time. To this day, when we hear the sound of a river, something stirs. Perhaps it's recognition of something older than history, a memory etched into bone and breath. Because rivers didn't just carry fish and silt, they carried the possibility of departure. They helped life step out of the ocean, into the unknown, from water to shore, from fins to feet, from floating to walking. It was not an abandonment, it was an expansion. Even the creatures that made this leap kept water close. Amphibians must return to it to breed. Reptiles carry its memory in their eggs. Mammals, too, evolved in watery landscapes. Many even return to the sea. Whales, dolphins, manatees. Water never lets go. It becomes part of you. In the blood that carries oxygen, in the tears that mark both joy and grief, in the sweat that cools you on a summer day, in the breath you exhale on a cold morning misted with invisible droplets. And so we end this chapter at a quiet riverbank. The sea is far behind us, but its voice still flows in every ripple. Tiny insects skim the surface. Frogs sing from the shallows. Leaves drift downstream towards some unknown end. Life has reached the land, but water came with it, and always will. Let's look upward for a while, not just to admire the sky's quiet stretch across the horizon, but to listen for the subtle breath of water as it rises, drifts, and gently returns to us. The water cycle is often taught in neat diagrams, labelled arrows, tidy stages, predictable paths. But in truth, it behaves more like a slow heartbeat, a soft, eternal rhythm moving through sky, land, sea, and your very body. It begins with a kind of vanishing, evaporation. Each time the sun touches the surface of a pond, a leaf, or even the warm skin of your hand, a bit of water begins to lift, slowly, silently. Not in waves or splashes, but molecule by molecule, drifting upward. The heat gives these molecules energy. They slip from the surface and rise, leaving behind salt, minerals, or warmth, whatever they can no longer carry. You don't see this moment, but it's always happening. Over lakes and oceans, in garden soil, along roadsides after a storm. Even now in the quiet air around you. This is the sky's gentle inhale. And as the water vapour ascends, it meets cooler air. The molecules slow down, draw closer to one another, and almost imperceptibly begin to cling. This is condensation, the first suggestion of a cloud. Tiny droplets gather around even smaller particles. A speck of dust, a grain of pollen, a fleck of ash. And with enough of these droplets, a cloud is born. Not solid, not heavy, but dense enough to catch sunlight, to cast shade, to drift. Clouds are, in a way, water waiting to return. They ride on air currents, move across continents, build against mountains, rise, cool and thicken, and hover for days, full but quiet. Others gather strength and sweep through the sky, grey and expectant. Eventually, the water they carry becomes too much to hold, and then the sky exhales. Rain, or snow, or sleet, or hail, or mist that beads on your window in the early morning. Precipitation is the release, the return. It may fall fast or soft as a summer drizzle or a monsoon's flood, but it always begins as something that rose. Perhaps you've stood at the window and listened. The tapping of drops against glass, the shiver of leaves, the hiss of rainfall on a warm road. Familiar sounds, but ancient ones, because each raindrop has lived many lives. It may have risen from the Pacific and travelled across continents. It may have evaporated from a cup of tea, a breath, or a mountain stream. It may have circled the globe in cloud form before falling in your backyard. Water doesn't just travel, it remembers, and it doesn't fall randomly. It follows the choreography of pressure, wind, and temperature. The Earth's rotation, the tilt of its axis, even the shape of a valley, can determine when and where the sky will let it go. But from your perspective, standing still and feeling the cool dot of rain on your wrist, it might seem like something more intimate, a conversation, a gift, because water doesn't forget where it came from. Some of that rain will sink into soil, will find its way to rivers, some will rest in puddles, shimmer for a moment and rise again, and some, just a little, might be caught on your sleeve or in your hair or on your tongue as you step outside and smile into the grey. The great cycle continues, rising, condensing, falling, returning. It isn't rushed, it isn't loud, it simply is, a slow breath the earth has taken for billions of years. And tonight, as you listen to these words, perhaps you'll notice the soft rhythm of your own breath. In, out, in, out. Not so different really. The sky does the same. Let's imagine a single drop of water high in the sky. It begins its descent quietly. No grand entrance, no declaration, just gravity taking hold. It has gathered its weight over hours, perhaps days, coalescing inside a cloud until it can no longer stay suspended. And now it falls. It may tumble through a shaft of sunlight, glowing for just a second, or ride a cold breeze into a waiting forest. Perhaps it joins a chorus of droplets, descending together as part of a gentle rain. Or perhaps it is alone, the first of many. As it falls, it passes through air filled with scent, damp soil, crushed leaves, maybe even the faintest trace of chimney smoke. The world is reaching up to greet it, and then the landing. It could be a leaf, wide and green and cool, catching the drop like a soft hand. The droplet trembles there, balanced on a surface slick with wax and memory. For a moment it does nothing, just rests. Then, almost reluctantly, it begins to move, sliding along the curve of the leaf, joining with others, gathering speed. It reaches the tip and lets go. Down it falls again, smaller now but determined. It touches soil, not with a splash but with a hush, and there it begins a slower kind of journey, no longer falling but seeping. This is the hidden part of the water cycle, the one we seldom notice. Infiltration, water slipping into the earth, weaving between grains of sand, hugging particles of clay, pulled downward by gravity and drawn sideways by root systems that sense its presence. In this cool, dark space, the drop may encounter life. Bacteria, tiny worms, fungal threads fanning through the ground. Or it may find roots, thin and reaching, ready to drink. Plants don't gulp. They draw slowly and steadily, using osmosis to move water into their cells. The raindrop, now pulled inward, joins the plant's internal network. It rises not with pressure or pump, but with capillary action, held by cohesion, lifted by the pull of evaporation from above. This journey upward happens within the plant's xylem, a network of narrow tubes that act like straws, but not straight ones. These paths twist, fork, and wind, guiding the water from roots to stems to leaves, through stems that sway in wind and branches that reach toward light. It's a slow, patient ascent. At the top in the leaf, the water may serve many roles. Some of it becomes part of photosynthesis, split and reassembled into sugars that feed the plant. Some is stored, some is sent elsewhere, and some escapes. Through tiny pores, stomata, the plant releases water vapour back into the air. A soft exhale roar, invisible, but real. This is transpiration, a quieter cousin of evaporation, and together these two processes, evaporation and transpiration, are often simply called evapotranspiration. They are the engine that keeps water moving upward, even when the drop itself cannot. But not all water takes the leaf path. Some flows across the surface, moving along. The curve of the land. This is runoff, the visible migration of water over rocks and soil, collecting in trickles, then streams, then rivers. Each river begins with raindrops like this, gathered over hillsides and forests, joining together, pulled by gravity, always heading for lower ground. And as the water flows, it picks things up, minerals, bits of earth, the stories of landscapes. It may carry nutrients from fallen leaves or sediment from a recent landslide. It may carve, deepen, or simply follow the shape of the terrain. Some drops will make it to lakes, others to oceans. Some may stop for years in underground reservoirs or disappear into crevices only to emerge again as springs far away. And some in time will end up in you. In your glass, your body, your blood. You're not separate from this raindrop. You're one of its resting places, temporary, necessary, because eventually it will leave again through breath or sweat or tears, back into the air, back into the sky, and the cycle continues, one drop, many paths, no end. Now let's stay with the river. It began, as we've seen, with raindrops, quiet ones that slipped from the sky, slid across leaves, pooled on stones, and joined others until they found motion. Flow, direction. A river is not born suddenly. It gathers itself slowly, like a sentence forming from scattered thoughts. A drop becomes a trickle becomes a stream. Streams converge into currents, and together they become something powerful, but not loud. Even the greatest rivers, the Amazon, the Nile, the Mekong, begin in whispers, and once moving, water becomes more than a traveller. It becomes a sculptor. Rivers carve the world, not with tools or fury, but with patience, a steady, relentless shaping. Over time, they etch their path into the skin of the earth, wearing down mountains, crumbling stone, dragging soil from highlands to valleys. Imagine a droplet of water pressing against a rock. Now imagine that same pressure, repeated billions of times. That is how canyons are made, not with explosional violence, but through erosion. The soft abrasion of rock by water and the sediments it carries. Sand, gravel, clay, all of it swept along, grinding the bed beneath the river as it flows, like sandpaper made of memory. The Grand Canyon, vast and silent, was carved this way. One river, one persistent flow, over millions of years. Layer by layer the earth gave way, revealing stone once hidden beneath time. But rivers don't just take, they also give. As they move downhill, they slow, and when they slow they begin to deposit, releasing the sediments they once carried. These deposits create floodplains, wide and fertile where soil is rich with nutrients. Crops grow better here. Civilizations thrive here. The land beside a river is always changing, gaining here, losing there. And when the river floods, which it will, it leaves behind fresh layers of silt and sand, renewing the soil once more. That's why some of the most ancient cities in human history, Thebes, Mohenjo-Daro, rose along rivers. Water shaped not just the land, but the lives that grew upon it. And the process continues today. Even the smallest creek you pass on a walk is reshaping the ground beneath it. Even the roadside gutter, during a rainstorm, is participating in this quiet, persistent craft. Rivers also carve with intention. They form meanders, broad, graceful loops that wander across flat land. Water prefers curves. It flows faster on the outside of a bend and slower on the inside. Over time it erodes one bank and builds another, shifting like thought, creating oxbow lakes and looping memories in the landscape. There is nothing hurried about this. It is a kind of water meditation, a slow exploration of the most efficient path from source to sea. Sometimes rivers dive underground, carving limestone caves in places where the bedrock gives way. They create tunnels of silence where stalactites grow and time feels thick. Other times, they cascade downward in waterfalls, brief moments of drama and an otherwise gentle journey, only to resume their flow as calmly as before. And the things rivers carry, nutrients, minerals, even seeds, become messengers. They feed wetlands, nurture estuaries, and eventually release their gifts into the ocean, where the journey began. In doing so, rivers link everything. Mountain snowmelt to coastal salt marsh, quiet forest springs to coral reefs far offshore. Water moves through all of it, and it leaves its fingerprints behind. Look at a map of Earth, and you'll see its handiwork. Branching, winding lines that look like veins or tree roots. River systems are organic, living outlines of the water that shape them. They are not fixed. They shift, split, rejoin. Some disappear underground. Others dry up for centuries, only to return with a change in rainfall or climate. And yet they endure. A river, once formed, has a memory. It may take a new path, but it remembers where it began, and it always moves toward where it belongs. You've likely stood beside one before, heard the steady sound of flow, watched leaves drift downstream, felt the cool air rise from its surface. In that moment, you were standing beside one of Earth's oldest artists, and it was still at work. Not all water rushes forward in rivers or lifts itself skyward in steam. Some of it chooses stillness. In hidden places, high above and deep below, water moves to a slower rhythm, folding itself into the land like breath held quietly in the lungs of the earth. These are the places where water becomes a memory. Begin at the top, in the mountains, where silence lingers over stone and wind sculpts the snow into smooth drifts and ridged crowns. Here snow falls gently, flake upon flake, accumulating with the patience of centuries. Each winter adds another layer, and each layer slowly compacts, pressing itself into ice. Not the brittle kind that cracks in your glass, but a dense, ancient glacier that holds the weight of time in every frozen ripple. These glaciers are more than frozen water. They are slow-moving rivers of compressed snowfall, flowing not with speed, but with steady persistence. They slide downhill inch by inch, year by year, grinding rock into flour, carving valleys where none existed before. And even as they appear frozen in place, they're always in motion, shifting beneath their own weight, whispering change across entire landscapes. Beneath their surface, water melts and moves, forming secret channels and under-ice streams. This meltwater may slip into cracks in the bedrock, disappear underground, or emerge far away as part of a river's source. Some of it remains locked in place for thousands of years, forming frozen archives beneath the surface where time is preserved not in paper or stone but in layers of ice. Scientists drill into these glaciers and extract ice cores, tall cylinders of frozen time. Inside them are tiny bubbles, air trapped long ago, that reveal the composition of Earth's ancient atmosphere. They hold the fingerprint of long past seasons, warm years, cold years, volcanic eruptions, and even traces of early human activity. Each layer is a quiet page in the history of the planet. And so, in this high and quiet world, water doesn't just flow, it remembers. But let's go deeper now, far below the grass, beneath the roots of trees and the reach of sunlight. Where water waits in stone, here lie the aquifers, hidden reservoirs tucked between layers of rock, sand or gravel. These underground spaces don't bubble or surge. They hold water like a sponge, slowly soaking it in through the spaces between grains. This is groundwater, and it flows so gradually that it can take years or even centuries to move from one place to another. Some aquifers are shallow and renewed often, fed by modern rainfall and quick to respond to the world above. Others are ancient, sealed beneath layers of sediment and filled long ago when the climate was different. Cooler, wetter, wilder. This fossil water, as it's sometimes called, may have fallen as rain before cities rose, before rivers had names, before written memory began. And yet despite their silence, aquifers are part of the cycle. They're not separate. From the rivers and clouds, they're simply slower, quieter. Some release their contents through natural springs where water wells up from the earth with a kind of grace. Others are tapped by human wells, drawn to the surface after resting underground for centuries. Even here, in the dark beneath our feet, water is still moving, not quickly but inevitably. It trickles through pores in sandstone, slips through fractures in bedrock, follows pressure and gravity in a subterranean waltz. Whether flowing in frozen valleys or resting in underground silence, water holds the memory of the world. Not just what it touched, but what it was. It carries the temperature of an ancient sky, the breath of mammoths, the ash of long-dead volcanoes. It is a recorder of time, unassuming, patient, and always listening. When you drink from a deep spring or trace the edge of a melting glacier, you're encountering water that may not have moved in thousands of years. And still, even in stillness, it has been changing, very slowly, very subtly, waiting for its turn to move again. Eventually, all water rejoins the cycle. Glaciers melt in spring, feeding rivers with cold clarity. Aquifers overflow during wet seasons, nourishing roots and feeding streams. Nothing is held forever. Everything returns. And so the cycle continues, not just in the visible, but in the hidden. Not just in rainstorms and rivers, but in ancient ice and sleeping stone. Sometimes what moves slowest leaves the deepest impression. Let's return now to where it all began, with a single drop of water. You followed it through skies and soil, through cloud and current, from riverbeds to roots to the breath rising gently from your lips. You've seen it fall as rain and rise again in sunlight. You've watched it rest in glaciers, wait in stone and pass silently through every living thing. And even now it isn't finished, because water never truly stops. It moves in slow spirals, folds into itself like the rhythm of breathing. It loops, it lingers, and it returns, not by chance but by design. There are no sharp corners in its journey, no final destinations, only transitions. A drop may take 100 paths, some it has followed before, others entirely new, but it always rejoins the great flow. And in that quiet certainty lies something oddly comforting. Transformation in the world of water is never loss. It is simply change. When a droplet disappears into the air, it isn't gone. It's just beginning again, rising invisibly, weightless as thought, to become mist or cloud, to gather and fall once more. Melting doesn't erase a glacier. A spring doesn't forget the snow it came from. Even the deepest aquifer, resting for 1,000 years, will one day overflow and rejoin the sky. This rhythm, the hydrologic cycle, isn't merely a process, it's the Earth's breath, exchanged endlessly between land, sea and sky. It sustains ecosystems, carries heat around the planet and binds us all in a common exchange. It connects rainforests with polar ice, desert air with mountain streams, your bloodstream with the clouds above your home. It connects you, because you too are part of it. The water within you, about 60% of your body, isn't a closed system. It flows in and out each day through breath, sweat, tears and time. The same water that formed in ancient oceans now cools your skin and softens your voice. A sip from your glass may once have fallen on a prehistoric fern or slid from a cave wall in the last ice age. The water on Earth doesn't disappear or regenerate. It simply moves. It finds new forms, new vessels, new skies to fall from, and it does so endlessly. That means every drop is old, inevitably old. There is no new water. What you drink today was here when the first fish swam, when the first forests grew, when the first stars were still reflected in oceans unbroken by land. Perhaps that's why listening to water, the murmur of a stream and the rhythm of soft rain, feels like remembering something you never consciously learned. It speaks in a voice older than language, not loud, not insistent, but persistent, reassuring. It says, I've been here before, I'll be here again, and that voice is always nearby. Whether you live by a lake or in a city apartment, whether you stand under a storm or hold a cup of tea in quiet hands, the cycle continues around you and through you. You don't need to understand it, fully to feel it. You don't need to chase it. Just notice it. The mist on your window in the morning, or the condensation on your glass, the warm steam rising from a bowl of soup. These are not accidents or afterthoughts. They are part of the same vast rhythm that shapes landscapes and carries clouds. Even now the drop continues, returning to the sky, falling again, not for the first time, never for the last. Let's step quietly from the rivers, mud and glaciers of deep time into something closer to home. Your kitchen faucet, your morning shower, the glass beside your bed. Because while water may begin in clouds or springs or mountaintop snow, it doesn't simply appear when you turn a tap. It travels, silently, invisibly, beneath the places where we live, in systems older and more complex than most of us ever realize. Beneath your feet, below the streets and sidewalks, water flows, not in natural streams, but in pipes, channels and reservoirs shaped by human hands. Before it reaches your glass, it journeys through a world of valves and tanks, meters and meters of buried infrastructure. And long before modern plumbing, people were solving the same problem: how to bring water from source to sink. The ancient Romans built aqueducts, massive stone channels that stretched for miles across hills and valleys. With a gentle slope and brilliant engineering, they carried spring water into cities, feeding public baths, fountains and households. Some still function today, a quiet echo of humanity's long relationship with water movement. In parts of the Middle East and Central Asia, qanats, underground tunnels dug by hand, channeled mountain water towards the dry lowlands, preserving precious liquid in the shade of earth. In South America, Incan engineers diverted high-altitude springs through carved stone basins. Across cultures, the same truth emerged. Access to fresh water meant survival, and ingenuity would follow thirst. Today, much of that wisdom remains, refined, scaled, and hidden beneath concrete. In most cities, water is pulled from a source, a river, reservoir, lake, or underground aquifer. From there, it is pumped into treatment facilities, pressurized and routed through a branching network of mains and service lines, all designed to reach millions of homes, apartments, schools, and sinks. These pipes are often old, buried decades ago, some even over a century. In many cities, they follow the curves of neighbourhoods long gone, weaving under highways and staircases and trees. They leak, they hiss, they are constantly maintained by people you will probably never meet, who work through the night to ensure that your tap opens on command. But not all water begins in a pipe. In rural areas or small towns, many people still rely on wells, drilling down to reach groundwater trapped in porous rock. These wells can stretch hundreds of feet into the earth, tapping into aquifers that may have formed long before any building stood nearby. When you draw water from a well, you are connecting directly to the quiet, ancient body of water below your home, a relationship not with infrastructure, but with geology. And still, that water moves. It's lifted by pumps, stored in tanks, protected by pressure systems that keep it safe from intrusion. Whether piped or drawn, water must be moved upward, outward and onward, through heating systems, filters, and faucets, across buildings and landscapes designed around its availability. And none of it is simple. The systems that deliver water to your home are among the most complex ever built, and among the most fragile. A storm can damage supply, a drought can empty a reservoir, a crack in a pipe beneath a city block can leave entire neighbourhoods dry within hours. Yet we rarely see these systems. We don't walk the tunnels, we don't hear the pumps, we simply turn the handle and trust. But imagine just for a moment following the water in reverse. Start at your sink, watch it spiral down the drain. Now trace it backward, through curved pipes beneath the floor, through mains beneath the street, past filtration and treatment stations, back toward the reservoir or well it came from. Follow it through pumping stations, pressure valves, inspection chambers. Travel with it to where it began, perhaps in rainfall months earlier, or in snowmelt high in the mountains, or in groundwater that once fell as rain 100 years ago. This is the unseen journey, the quiet infrastructure that connects the ancient cycle of nature to your morning routine. We don't often notice it, but it's there, and it's working quietly, constantly beneath our cities, carrying not just water but the past, the future, and the quiet promise that life will flow on drop by drop. Now that we've followed water beneath our feet through pipes and wells and valves hidden under the skin of cities, let's pause at a quieter moment in its journey, before it reaches your glass, before it steams into your shower, before it flows over your hands in the shape of a daily ritual. It must be made clean, because no matter how ancient or clear a water source may seem, water almost always carries something with it, things dissolved invisibly, gathered in its long journey. Minerals, of course, but also microbes, sediment, and traces of things we'd rather not drink. Before it becomes safe and familiar, water must be treated, refined, and cared for with quiet precision. This isn't just a matter of boiling or filtering, it's an art, a carefully layered process that blends engineering, chemistry, and a little patience. It begins, typically, at a treatment plant, where raw water from a river, lake, or well arrives in large quantities. From the outside, these plants can look unremarkable. Low buildings, wide basins, the occasional echo of machinery. But inside, something remarkable is happening. Water is being transformed. The first step is often screening, where large debris, leaves, twigs, even the occasional wayward bottle, is removed. It's a physical act, simple but necessary. After that, the water moves through coagulation and flocculation, two quietly elegant processes where chemicals are added to encourage small particles to bind together. These clumps, called floc, are heavier than water and begin to settle. The next phase, sedimentation, allows gravity to do its work. The floc sinks, forming a soft layer at the bottom of large tanks, while the cleaner water above moves forward to the next step, filtration. Filtration is more delicate than it sounds. The water is passed through layers of sand, gravel and charcoal, each chosen for their ability to catch different particles. Viruses, bacteria, microscopic bits of dust, all are sifted out, held back by a careful design that mimics, in many ways, this natural filtering that happens in healthy soil. But it's not quite enough. So we turn to disinfection, often the final and most crucial step. For many systems, this means chlorination, the introduction of a carefully measured dose of chlorine to kill any remaining pathogens. In other places, water may be exposed to ultraviolet, a UV light, which disrupts the DNA of harmful organisms, rendering them harmless without chemicals. Some systems use ozone, a reactive form of oxygen, to cleanse the water further. Each method has its strengths. Chlorine leaves a residual layer of protection as water travels through pipes. UV and ozone are powerful but require precision. Some cities combine them, layering defense upon defense, like invisible shield between the source and your sink. And through all of this, the goal is simple: clarity, safety, and taste. The water that emerges at the end of this journey is, in most modern systems, remarkably pure, far purer than it was just decades ago. It is monitored constantly, tested for bacteria, heavy metals, pH balance, and more. In some cities, sensors now analyse water quality in real time, sending signals when something strays beyond the acceptable range. But despite all this technology, the heart of the process remains deeply human. An ancient trust in clean water as the foundation of health. Historically, the invention of water purification has saved more lives than any other medical breakthrough. Diseases like cholera, dysentery, and typhoid were once common in cities, spread invisibly through contaminated water. With the rise of purification systems in the 19th and 20th centuries, life expectancy surged, neighbourhoods became healthier, public fountains became safe, and yet this cleanliness is fragile. A lapse in treatment, a crack in infrastructure, a miscalculation in chemistry, any of these can undo the work of entire systems. We've seen it happen. Headlines appear when water turns brown, or when strange tastes or smells alert people to something not quite right. That's why purification is not just a mechanical process, it's a discipline. One that requires constant vigilance, deep understanding, and a commitment to something we so often take for granted. If you've ever filled a glass with tap water and not thought twice, that's a kind of success. It means someone, somewhere, did their job with quiet excellence. But the next time you do it, perhaps you'll pause. Consider the journey that droppers made, not just across land and through pipes, but through tanks, filters, UV chambers, and testing labs. It has been spun, strained, disinfected, and measured before ever reaching your hand. Clean water doesn't arrive by accident. It's created with care, and it carries, even now, the memory of the mountain stream, the aquifer, the cloud. It is ancient, yes, but in this moment it is also ready, clear, trustworthy, yours. You might not give it much thought, but when you pour a glass of water, you're drinking a blend of chemistry, geology, and history. The water itself may be clear, nearly weightless, almost silent. But within that stillness are traces of where it has been, of what it's touched, of the deep terrain it once passed through. Because no matter how clean and purified water becomes, it always carries a signature, a whisper of its journey. Take a sip. What does it taste like? Most people would say it tastes like nothing, but that's not quite true. Water has flavour. Not bold or brash like coffee or wine, but subtle, like a shadow of minerals and memory. If you've ever travelled between cities and noticed that the water tastes different, even when drawn straight from the tap, you've experienced this firsthand. That taste comes from what's dissolved in it, not dirt or impurities, but minerals that seep in naturally as water moves through rock and soil. Calcium, magnesium, potassium, even trace amounts of iron, silica, and zinc. These aren't contaminants, they're the soft architecture of water's personality. Water from limestone aquifers, for example, tends to be rich in calcium and magnesium. This is hard water, and while it may leave spots on dishes or a chalky line around your bathtub, it's perfectly safe to drink. In fact, many people prefer its taste, slightly fuller, slightly earthy. Water from granite bedrock, by contrast, often lacks those minerals. It's soft, sometimes slightly acidic, and feels smoother on the tongue. Spring water bottled from such regions is often prized for its clarity and lightness. And then there's fluoride, a mineral that doesn't arrive naturally in most drinking water, but is often added in small, carefully controlled amounts. Fluoride strengthens tooth enamel, reducing cavities, and its addition to public water supplies in the mid-20th century was one of the most impactful public health decisions in modern history. It's still used today, though not without ongoing debate and variation by region. What's fascinating is that every water source, whether a tap in a city apartment or a spring in the mountains, has a distinct chemical fingerprint. Scientists can sometimes trace the origin of water samples based on this blend of dissolved solids. In archaeology and forensics, even the water locked in hair or bone can reveal where a person lived or what they drank. This signature doesn't just affect taste or science, it affects how water behaves. Mineral-rich water can form scale in pipes, shortening the lifespan of appliances. It can also affect how soap lathers, how coffee brews, how tea infuses. If you've ever made tea in a new city and noticed it tastes slightly different, even using the same leaves, it's likely because the water has changed. Bottled water brands build entire identities around these differences. One bottle may boast of glacial purity, another of volcanic minerals. Some are carbonated naturally at the source, others infused with bubbles afterward. Some are alkaline, others neutral. Some come from deep aquifers, others from filtered municipal systems repackaged and labelled with care. The irony, of course, is that many of the most expensive waters are not significantly healthier than what flows from your tap. In most developed countries, municipal water is tested more frequently, more transparently, and with stricter oversight than most bottled water brands. Yet packaging, perception, and taste led many people to reach for plastic. That decision between tap and bottle is often more emotional than scientific. It's about trust, taste, habit, and for some, the illusion of purity. But water doesn't need to be exotic to be remarkable. It already is. Even the water from your sink contains molecules older than civilization. Some may have passed through plants or animals, through clouds or soil or sandstone. Some may have been locked in aquifers since before the last ice age. Others may have circled the globe as vapour, cooled, condensed, and returned to Earth in the rain that fell just weeks ago. And now here they are, in your glass, still moving, still waiting to become something new. When you drink water, you're participating in a story without a beginning or end. A story told in molecular motion and mineral trace. A story written across continents through pipes and pores and particles too small to see. So next time you lift a glass, pause for a moment. Notice its temperature, its stillness. That slight taste you can't quite describe. Note that it carries with it a silent signature, etched by stone, softened by time, filtered through the earth, refined by human care, and that its presence in your hands is a quiet miracle of infrastructure, chemistry, and the ancient cycle that touches every life. This is what's in your glass, and it's never just water. We've spent time admiring the quiet elegance of the water cycle, tracing the journey from cloud to tap and marvelling at the invisible work behind every drop in your glass. But for many people around the world, that journey is not so smooth. It doesn't end in a clean stream or a polished faucet. It ends in dust, in drought, in long walks to distant wells, or worse, in illness from drinking what shouldn't have to be drunk. Because as abundant as water may seem, falling from the sky, filling oceans, flowing through pipes, it is not equally shared, and it is not infinitely available. Scarcity in the world of water is not always about how much there is. Often it's about who has access and who doesn't. More than 2 billion people today lack access to safely managed drinking water. In some places, this means boiling every cup before drinking. In others, it means walking hours each day to reach a distant well, often shared by hundreds. In urban slums, it may mean relying on overpriced truck deliveries or community taps with unreliable supply. This isn't just inconvenient, it's life-altering. It affects education, Because children, especially girls, often miss school to collect water. It affects health, because without clean water, sanitation becomes impossible, and waterborne diseases spread. And it affects time, because hours spent searching for water are hours not spent building, learning or resting. And even in places where water flows freely from the tap, it's not always safe. In aging cities with corroded infrastructure, lead contamination, bacteria and industrial runoff can quietly creep into pipes. In rural areas, agricultural chemicals, fertilizers, pesticides, nitrates seep into wells. The water may look clear, it may taste normal, but it carries harm. And then there's drought. Drought is not the dramatic image of cracked earth and dry lakes we often imagine, at least not at first. It begins quietly, a season with less rainfall, a shrinking reservoir, a groundwater table that drops by just a few centimetres, and then it builds. Crops fail, rivers run low, fires rise, and water becomes a resource not just to use, but to ration, to protect, to fight over. In some parts of the world, water scarcity leads to conflict between farms and cities, between countries that share rivers, between upstream and downstream communities who each feel entitled to the same flowing source. And layered on top of all this is the growing challenge of climate change. As global temperatures rise, weather patterns shift. Wet places grow wetter, dry places grow drier. Snowpack that once melted slowly through spring now disappears in sudden floods. Storms grow stronger, droughts grow longer, glaciers retreat, aquifers are overdrawn, and water, once a source of stability, becomes less predictable. In response, many people turn to bottled water, a modern symbol of purity and safety, sealed in clear plastic. But bottled water is not a sustainable solution to global scarcity. It often draws from the same municipal sources as tap water, uses far more energy in its production and transport, and leaves behind billions of plastic bottles, many of which are never recycled. And yet, we cling to it. Perhaps because it's easy, or maybe because it feels like control in a world where water sometimes feels too vast or too uncertain. But the deeper truth is, we can't bottle our way out of a water crisis. Real solutions require care and coordination. They involve conservation, yes, but also investment, innovation and equity. Cities are beginning to reclaim wastewater, transforming it through purification into clean drinking water. Farmers are turning to drip irrigation and drought-resistant crops. Engineers are designing toilets that use far less water, or none at all. And in many places, communities are learning to live with less, not as a punishment, but as a shift in mindset. A tap turned off while brushing teeth, a rain barrel catching stormwater for the garden, a conscious choice to understand where your water comes from and where it goes after it leaves. These small acts matter. They may not feel heroic, but taken together, millions at a time, they form a quiet resistance to waste. A quiet respect for the systems we depend on. Because water is not just a resource, it's a relationship. And like all relationships, it needs care, attention, and the occasional moment of pause. So take that pause sometime today. Turn on the tap, let it run for a second, watch it, think of where it began, think of how many didn't get that same gift this morning, and think of what it would take. Not just to keep it flowing for you, but to make sure it flows for everyone for generations to come. Not with fear, but with gentleness, with gratitude, and with the understanding that this quiet, everyday miracle is not guaranteed. It's chosen every day by the way we build, share, and protect the water we're given. Let's end this chapter by returning to something close. Not the distant glacier, or the deep aquifer, or the winding path beneath ancient cities, but the water you use today. Not just the glass you drank this morning, but the long shower you took without thinking, the vegetables you rinsed, the laundry spinning in a low hum, the toilet flush that disappeared into silence. Because water doesn't just touch your life, it shapes it constantly, silently. and much of that touch is invisible. On average, a single person uses between 80 to 100 gallons of water per day, but that number only tells part of the story. Behind every object, every bite of food, every thread of clothing, there is a hidden stream. A flow of water you never see, but that was needed all the same. A cotton shirt? It may have taken 2,500 litres of water to grow the cotton, dye it and process it. A cup of coffee? Around 40 litres, once you include the water used to grow, harvest, roast and ship the beans. Even a slice of bread carries a hidden river. Irrigation for wheat, washing for machinery, water for baking. This is your water footprint. Not just what you pour from the faucet, but the water embedded in everything around you. It's not meant to make you feel guilty. It's meant to bring awareness, because awareness invites care. It encourages small choices that over time shape a quieter, more respectful relationship with the systems we rely on. And some of those systems are beautifully simple. Take the rain tank, for example. A container, a pipe, a sloped roof. That's all you need to capture the sky. In cities around the world, people are returning to this old idea, letting the roof collect what falls naturally, storing it for dry spells, for gardens, for washing. It's not a new technology, but it is a kind of quiet rebellion, a way to remember that water doesn't always have to come from distant pipes and deep pumps. Or consider the small rivers still running through your town, your countryside. They might not be wide or deep, but they connect past and present, flowing beside trails and under bridges, tracing the same paths carved centuries ago. If you follow them upstream, you often find their sources unchanged. A spring in the hillside, a marshy field, a narrow trickle beneath moss-covered stones. And downstream? Eventually they join others. Tributaries merge, streams become rivers, rivers reach the sea, and your city, your neighbourhood, your house, or your water is somewhere along that story. We often forget that. Our lives are so wrapped in plumbing and purification that the origin of water becomes something distant, theoretical, but it's still there, just beyond the edge of town, or falling quietly on your roof, or pushing softly beneath the sidewalk in an underground stream. To reconnect with water is not always to travel far. Sometimes it's simply to pay attention. The sound of a gutter overflowing during a storm, the cool of morning dew on your fingers, the quiet drip of condensation from a cold glass on a warm day. These are reminders not just of the water around you, but of your place in the cycle. Because just as water returns again and again, so too does your role in using it wisely. Every time you wash your hands, there's a choice, hot or cold, long or quick, tap left running or turned off while you scrub. Every time you run a load of laundry, there's a decision, full load or partial, cold or wash or hot. And every time you eat, shop, clean or discard, there's a ripple, a faint echo in the larger pattern of water movement around the globe. You don't need to overhaul your life to honour that pattern. Sometimes it's enough just to know it's there. To remember that the water you use today was once part of a cloud or a glacier, or a stream tumbling down a hillside in the early morning light. To remember that it doesn't vanish when it swirls down the drain. It continues. It joins rivers, passes through treatment plants, becomes vapour, falls again. Your water is borrowed and returned, and in that gentle cycle of use and release, of consumption and care, you are part of something older than cities, older than agriculture, older than language itself. A continuity made of droplets, and every drop, even the one you're about to drink, holds not just refreshment, but memory, movement and meaning. So lift your glass, notice its weight, and know that in doing so that you're completing a journey that began long before you were born, and that will continue long after you sleep. Let's pause here, not in the clouds or the rivers or the ocean's slow breath, but right here, in your own body, in the soft weight of your chest as you breathe, in the quiet rhythm of your pulse, in the warmth beneath your skin, because you are, quite literally, a body of water. It's not just a metaphor. The human body is made of water, about 60% give or take. In babies, that number can climb even higher, close to 75%. With age, it shifts slightly, but the truth remains, more than half of you is liquid. You're not solid ground. You're a moving stream, a walking reservoir, a carefully balanced network of flows and pools and microscopic tides. Start with your blood. It moves with purpose but gently. Carried within it is plasma, a pale golden liquid that makes up over half of your blood's volume. And plasma is mostly water, about 90%. Within this flowing current travel nutrients, hormones, proteins, immune cells and oxygen itself. Each heartbeat is a push of water. Each breath is supported by a liquid current moving gases through your lungs and into your cells. Without water, that movement stops. But it doesn't end there. Your cells, the tiny bricks of your body's architecture, are themselves filled with water. Inside, a substance called cytoplasm allows all the machinery of life to function. Water surrounds the mitochondria that turn food into energy. It cushions DNA. It dissolves electrolytes and fuels the molecular engines that keep you alive. And it's not just inside the cells. Water also flows between them, in the spaces that cushion, transport and connect. This extracellular fluid helps carry messages, exchange nutrients and remove waste. It's part of your lymph, part of your synovial fluid, part of every moment you bend, twist, blink or stretch. Even your brain floats. Tucked inside your skull is a clear liquid called cerebrospinal fluid, which surrounds the brain and spinal cord. It provides buoyancy, reducing the effective weight of the brain by nearly 90%. Without this cushion, your brain would press down on itself with painful force. But thanks to water, it floats, suspended, protected, held. Water doesn't just move through you, it shapes you. It gives your skin its elasticity. It supports the structure of your eyes. It fills the small sacs in your lungs where gas exchange occurs. It keeps your joints moving without friction, your digestive system flowing, your mouth moist, your muscles supple. It is not background. It is the medium of life, and unlike bone or muscle or fit, water is constantly in motion. It doesn't stay put. It's always shifting, being absorbed, circulated, filtered, released. The water you drank this morning may already be part of your blood plasma. The water in your breath may have been exhaled just minutes after your last sip. You're not a container. You're a conduit. And the path water takes through you is more elegant than we often notice. It moves from the cell, gut to the bloodstream, from blood to tissue, from tissue to organ, from organ to exhalation, perspiration or elimination. And then, like all water, it begins again. It is easy to forget this, live in bodies every day, often without noticing what keeps them running. We speak, walk, think, eat, stretch and sleep, never once thanking the quiet liquid scaffolding that allows each act to occur. But when you do notice, when you pause and consider what it means to be mostly water, it changes something. You begin to see yourself not as separate from rivers or rain or mist, but as one more participant in the same long, looping story. A mobile lake, a brief vessel for a very old element. And it humbles you, because the water inside you has been here before. It has been part of other bodies, animal, plant, human. It has cycled through oceans, soared through clouds, frozen in glaciers, flowed through forests. It has rained, evaporated, melted, and condensed long before your first breath. And now, for a while, it's part of you. It fills you, moves in you, responds to you. It brings you life, and eventually it will leave you, released again into the open world ready for its next task. But for now, it is here, it is you, and that is a quiet wonder worth holding if only for a moment. You already know that water flows through you, that it fills your blood, cushions your cells, and quietly hums inside nearly every part of you. But it's not just there, it's not passive, water is at work. Even now as you lie still, listening, breathing gently, it is performing thousands of essential tasks without your permission or awareness. a quiet workforce, invisible and tireless, keeping you not only alive but balanced, nourished and in motion. Let's start with something small, digestion. When you eat, the body begins to break food down almost immediately. Your saliva, already a mix of water and enzymes, begins the process in your mouth. As food reaches the stomach and intestines, water helps dissolve nutrients, softening the mixture, allowing proteins to unravel, sugars to separate, and fats to emulsify. None of this happens dry. Without water, the digestive system becomes sluggish, stiff, confused. Nutrients stay locked in food. Waste moves slowly. Discomfort builds. But with water, just enough, in the right places, everything flows. Nutrients are absorbed, pass through intestinal walls, carried gently into the bloodstream. There, circulation takes over. Blood, as we've seen, is mostly water. And this watery plasma is what allows oxygen to travel from your lungs to your muscles, hormones to reach distant organs, and white blood cells to migrate to the site of an infection. The flow must be smooth, constant, responsive. If you're dehydrated, this flow slows. Blood thickens. The heart must work harder. Delivery becomes delay. Water doesn't just carry things forward, it also cleans. Through your kidneys, water helps remove waste and excess substances from your blood. It filters out urea, salts, and other byproducts of metabolism, channeling them into your bladder as urine. This process is constant, quiet, and deeply sensitive to your hydration. Without enough water, your kidneys conserve. They reduce output, concentrating urine, risking imbalances. With enough, they flush efficiently, balancing electrolytes, maintaining the delicate chemical equilibrium your body depends on. Then there's the temperature. If you've ever stepped out into the heat and felt a film of sweat form across your skin, that's water stepping in to protect you. Sweating is your body's natural air conditioning system. As sweat evaporates, it carries heat away from your surface, cooling you with each tiny droplet that disappears. It's not dramatic. It doesn't need to be. It's just physics. Heat transfer using water as the medium. And internally, blood flow adjusts to regulate warmth. In cold environments, vessels constrict to keep warmth near your core. In heat, they widen, allowing more blood and more water to move towards the skin. This silent choreography happens whether you notice or not, every moment of your life. But what's most remarkable isn't any single function. It's the harmony. Water doesn't operate in isolation. It doesn't specialize in one system. It supports them all. Digestion, circulation, respiration, detoxification, temperature regulation. Even your sense of energy is water dependent. When you feel fatigued, sluggish, or cloudy-headed, sometimes it isn't food or sleep that's missing. It's hydration. Even a small drop in your body's water content can affect mood, focus, and stamina. Your cells begin to whisper for more. Your body slows. And when water returns, it's like tuning a quiet instrument back into perfect pitch. You don't suddenly feel dramatic change. You just feel right again. Comfortable in your skin, clear in your thoughts, aligned. That alignment is more delicate than we often acknowledge. It doesn't take dramatic thirst to upset it. Just a slow forgetting, a day of coffee but no water, a skipped glass here or there, a quiet avoidance of the fountain or bottle. Your body adapts, always trying to stay afloat, but it shouldn't have to work quite so hard. Because when you provide water generously, without forcing or waiting, your body responds with ease. It digests better, thinks better, moves better, recovers faster, breathes more smoothly, sleeps more deeply. It's easy to forget how much water does because it asks so little. It has no taste, no odour, no calorie count. It doesn't stimulate or soothe in the way tea or wine might, but it supports everything that does. And it does so with humility. So the next time you sip water, or notice yourself feeling a little slow, or wonder why your head feels heavy, or your skin a bit dry, remember this. Water isn't a supplement. It's structure. It's support. It's the quiet worker inside you, washing every corner, delivering every message, cooling every excess, and gently making space for you to simply be alive. Your body is wise. It doesn't just speak in words or flashing lights, but in soft sensations, quiet adjustments, subtle urges. One of its most elegant messages is thirst, that gentle nudge behind your ribs, in the dryness of your mouth, or the whisper of craving that suggests water without even naming it. It's one of the earliest feelings you ever had. Long before you could walk or speak, thirst taught you to reach, to cry, to drink. And yet even now in adulthood, it remains one of the body's most underappreciated forms of communication. Because thirst is not just about dryness, it's about balance. Every part of your body depends on maintaining a precise concentration of fluids and dissolved substances, especially electrolytes like sodium and potassium. This balance allows your cells to take in nutrients, remove waste, and communicate with one another. The amount of water inside and around your cells must remain within a narrow window. Too much and your cells swell, too little and they shrink. Neither state is comfortable, neither supports healthy function, so your body monitors the balance constantly, with the quiet focus of a caretaker smoothing out every fluctuation. At the heart of this system is a small region deep within your brain, the hypothalamus. It sits just above the brainstem, no larger than an almond, and yet it is constantly gathering signals from the bloodstream, from hormone levels, from sensors that detect changes in blood pressure and salt concentration. When your body begins to drift out of balance, when fluid levels fall just slightly or salt levels rise, the hypothalamus notices, and when that happens, it prompts thirst. Not all at once, not with alarm bells, but gently, a dry throat, a heavier tongue, a small voice that says, water. And if you listen, if you sip slowly, your body feels that change immediately. The water is absorbed through your stomach and intestines and enters your bloodstream within minutes. Sensors notice the shift. The balance begins to return. You don't think about any of this. You're not supposed to. That's the grace of it. But sometimes we don't listen. We wait until thirst becomes obvious. We become mildly dehydrated. Just 1 or 2% of our body's water lost. And already the body begins to strain. Mood dips, focus blurs, headaches creep in, muscles feel heavier, the skin dries, the mouth grows sticky. All of this can happen before you ever feel truly thirsty. And for many people, especially the elderly, the thirst mechanism weakens with age. The body's need remains, but the message becomes quieter. That's why dehydration in older adults can be so dangerous. Not because the body fails, but because the signal gets lost in the noise of everyday life. Even in youth, thirst can be drowned out by habit or distraction. We replace water with other drinks, coffee, soda, juice, and while they may contain water, they also come with sugar, caffeine, or other substances that complicate the body's efforts to hydrate smoothly. And yet hydration doesn't require perfection. It just asks for awareness. Notice the subtle signs, the heaviness in the limbs, the stillness of thought, the dry lips, the fatigue that rolls in without a clear cause. These are your body's way of asking, not demanding, not warning, just inviting you to restore equilibrium. Sometimes thirst is physical, other times it's emotional. We speak of being parched for connection, of thirsting for clarity or calm. These metaphors exist because the sensation of needing water is so central, so ancient, that it finds its way into every part of how we think and feel. Water satisfies that need in a way nothing else can. It doesn't energize with caffeine. It doesn't thrill with flavor. It just restores. And if you've ever had that moment of finally sipping cold water after a long walk, or after waking from sleep, or after crying, you know the quiet joy of rebalancing, the soft click of things settling back into place. This is homeostasis, the body's gentle return to baseline. It doesn't celebrate loudly, it just exhales, releasing tension, returning to rhythm. And if there's any miracle in biology that deserves more attention, it might be this, that your body knows what it needs and that it asks so kindly. You don't need to wait until you're parched. You don't need to measure, calculate, or chase hydration like a goal. You only need to listen and to respond, not with panic, but with presence, with a glass of water held to your lips, with a moment of pause in the middle of a busy day, with the simple act of remembering that beneath everything you are fluid in motion, always shifting, always adjusting, always seeking balance, not through force but through grace. By now you've followed water from the farthest reaches of space to the depths of your cells. You've seen it fall from clouds, carve valleys, nourish forests, course through pipes, and rest quietly beneath cities. You've watched it flow through your bloodstream, regulate your temperature, and speak softly through the language of thirst. But even here, inside you, water doesn't stay. It moves through you, just as it moves through rivers and storms and oceans. And when it leaves, it carries something of you with it. You are not a closed container. You're part of the cycle. Each time you drink a glass of water, you're inviting something ancient into your body. A drop that might have once floated as mist above the Andes, or slipped beneath the roots of a pine forest, or spun gently in the cloud of a Pacific typhoon. That same drop now joins your blood, your cells, your breath. And then, slowly, it begins to leave. It slips out in your breath, first of all. Every time you exhale, especially on a cold morning when your breath becomes visible in the air, you're watching water vapour leave your lungs. It was drawn in with oxygen, exchanged in alveoli, and now it rises, clear, invisible, continuous. With each breath, a tiny amount of water exits, unnoticed but steady. Then there's sweat. Not just when you exercise or walk beneath the summer sun, but constantly in small, imperceptible amounts. Your skin exhales too. It cools, balances, breathes. That moisture you feel on your neck when the day is warm, that's water leaving you, protecting you, easing your internal fire. And of course there is urine. We speak of it with clinical detachment, or sometimes not at all, but it is one of the most sophisticated ways your body interacts with the planet. Your kidneys filter your blood hundreds of times a day. They decide what to keep, what to release, how much salt, how much water, how many molecules of urea, all sent out through a system that is as ancient as the first vertebrates. And when you pee, whether into a ceramic bowl or onto a patch of dry grass, that water rejoins the earth. It may travel through sewers, into treatment plants, through filtration and release, or it may sink into soil, mingle with microbes, and begin a different kind of journey. Either way, it returns. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is lost. Even the tears you shed, born of laughter, sorrow, wind, or empathy, are part of the cycle. Water expressing emotion, leaving not just your body, but something more, a trace of feeling folded back into the air. We often imagine ourselves as apart from nature, as observers, as something set above the mess of rain and root and mud. But you're participating always. Each sip, each breath, each drop of sweat, each trip to the bathroom is part of the planet's great rhythm. You drink the earth, you return it, over and over. And the water doesn't just carry molecules, it carries memory. Water once inside you may someday fall as rain onto a hillside, nourishing a seed. It may become part of a cloud drifting over a desert. It may feed a fox or a fern or settle deep into an aquifer and rest for 1,000 years. And perhaps one day, it will find its way into another body, another story. In this way, you are not only connected to the earth, you are woven into it. You are a brief pattern in the flow, and that pattern matters. It means something that you choose to drink with care, that you notice the water you use, that you treat your body as part of something larger, not just for your health, but for the world's health too. And perhaps it also means something quieter, something that doesn't need to be measured, that when you drink from a glass or wipe sweat from your brow, or stand beneath a warm shower and let the water soak into your hair, you are remembering without thinking that you are not alone, that you are part of a cycle that never ends. A drop of water does not ask where it belongs. It simply goes where it is needed. So do you. Water, at first glance, seems so simple. It's clear, tasteless, odourless. It flows, it falls, it fills our glasses and rivers and clouds. But beneath that quiet exterior is a kind of chemical magic, subtle, strange and essential to life as we know it. You've heard the phrase before, water is the universal solvent. It's true, but it's more than a slogan. Water's ability to dissolve things, salts, sugars, gases, proteins, even tiny fragments of the air we breathe, is the reason your body works, your planet breathes, and your cells can carry out the quiet work of living. But let's take a closer look. A single water molecule looks like a tiny triangle. 2 hydrogen atoms cling to one oxygen slightly off-centre, like ears on a head tilted in thought. This shape gives the molecule polarity, a gentle imbalance of electrical charge. One side leans positive, the other negative. That small asymmetry makes water stick to things. It sticks to itself. It sticks to glass. It clings to leaves, to spider webs, to the inside of your throat. It climbs upward in the stems of plants. It curls into droplets on a window. It beads across waxed cars and freshly washed skin. This stickiness is called cohesion, when water pulls itself together, and adhesion when it reaches outward to other surfaces. These forces work together to do beautiful things, like pulling water up through the roots of trees, drop by drop higher than gravity alone would allow. And then there's surface tension, that invisible skin that forms on top of still water, that lets insects walk across ponds or drops roll across a countertop without breaking, is the result of water molecules holding tightly to one another at the surface. It's like they're linking arms just at the edge, trying not to spill. This surface tension is delicate but strong, enough to cradle a water strider, enough to shape the curve of a droplet, enough to let your hand hover just above the surface of a bowl, feeling the heat without breaking the spell. Even more curious, water behaves differently than almost any other liquid. Most substances contract when they freeze. Their molecules slow down and pack tightly together, becoming denser in their solid form. But water doesn't follow that rule. When it freezes, its molecules arrange into a crystalline lattice, orderly, spacious, full of tiny gaps. The result? Ice floats. It's a small miracle with huge consequences. If ice sank, lakes and oceans would freeze from the bottom up. Entire ecosystems would collapse in winter. But instead, a thin lid of ice forms on top, insulating the water beneath, allowing life to continue in quiet darkness. That's the strange generosity of water. It breaks the rules to keep life going. And that's not all. Water has a high specific heat, meaning it takes a lot of energy to change its temperature. That's why coastal climates are mild, because the ocean soaks up heat by day and releases it slowly at night. That's why your body doesn't overheat too quickly when you're active. That's why a warm bath feels steady, not scalding or fleeting. Water holds heat with patience. It moves it gently, it protects against sudden shifts. In a world full of extremes, water brings moderation. Even as a vapour, it carries memory. In clouds, water binds into tiny suspended droplets, each lighter than air, yet together forming vast roaming cathedrals in the sky. Each droplet carries with it particles from the land, from the sea, from dust and pollen, and the breath of other creatures. Clouds are not just decoration, they are living maps of the world below. And when those droplets fall as rain, they cleanse, feed, and reconnect the earth to sky once more. All of this, these molecular oddities, these strange behaviours, comes from such a small structure. 2 hydrogens, 1 oxygen, that's all. But that triangle, that imbalance, that tiny tug of war between charges, opens the door to everything. Without that shape, there would be no rivers, no blood, no weather. No tears, no oceans, no you. And so send you next see a bead of water, on a window, on a blade of grass, on your own skin, remember that it's not just a drop. This is a structure of paradoxes, light but strong, Simple but endlessly complex, designed by physics but built for life. And it is holding together not just itself, but the entire possibility of existence, quietly, patiently, always. Long before chemistry explained it, long before microscopes and molecular diagrams, we felt something sacred in water. We stepped into rivers not just to cross them, but to be changed by them. We washed not just for cleanliness, but for clarity. Across time and across cultures, water has been our silent companion in ritual, healing, and the moments when something inside us shifts. Because water doesn't just cleanse the body, it marks transitions. In Christianity, water is poured over the head in baptism, not just to wash, but to welcome, to initiate a soul into a new kind of belonging. In Islam, there is wudu, the ritual washing before prayer, where hands, face and feet are rinsed in preparation for connection. In Hindu traditions, sacred rivers like the Ganges are believed to purify the soul. Pilgrims gather at its banks not just to bathe, but to be renewed, forgiven, returned to something essential. In Japan, the practice of onsen, bathing in natural hot springs, is not just about relaxation. It's a kind of communion. The water drawn from deep volcanic veins beneath the earth is rich in minerals, warmed by ancient bird, and are believed to carry healing. In silence, people slip into these baths, letting the water soften them, not just physically, but emotionally. And in many indigenous traditions, from the Americas to Australia, water is a living spirit, a grandmother, a relative, a being to be thanked, respected, protected. Ceremonies are held beside lakes, springs or waterfalls, with offerings and songs, honouring water not as a thing to be used, but a presence to be in relationship with. Even in places without specific rituals, we still feel it. The way a bath calms a frantic mind, the way we instinctively splash our face when we're overwhelmed, the comfort of standing in the rain and letting the sky touch you, reminding you that you're still here. Water witnesses these moments, quietly, without comment or demand, and perhaps nowhere is this more distilled, this sacred presence of water, than in the act of making tea. It seems simple, you heat water, you steep leaves, but in so many cultures, tea is more than a drink. It's an invitation to pause. In Japan, the tea ceremony, shanoyu, is an art form. Every movement is precise, every gesture intentional. Water is poured, stirred, sipped, and shared in silence. Not rushed, not distracted, just present. The steam rising from the bowl becomes a kind of offering. The act of making tea becomes a ritual of presence, gratitude, and deep attention. In China, tea is used to greet guests, to seal agreements, to honour elders. In Morocco, it is poured from high above the glass 3 times, each with its own meaning. In England, it punctuates the day, giving rhythm to time, a moment to pause and restore. In all these practices, water is the medium, the carrier of warmth, flavour and presence. But it's more than that. It's what makes the pause feel like a pause. It fills the space between words. It allows stillness to become tangible. You don't need a ceremony to feel this. Even a simple mug at home clutched between your palms on a rainy afternoon can carry the same weight. The warmth seeps into your skin. The steam brushes your lips. And without trying, you find yourself breathing slower. Water does that. It returns you to yourself. And this returning, this gentle movement from distraction to the presence is at the heart of so many rituals involving water. We pour it over our hands before meals. We wash newborns in it. We scatter it over graves. We cry. We sip. We bathe. Each time we're saying the same quiet thing. Here is a moment that matters. Let it be marked. Let it be softened. Let it be held. Water does not explain, it does not instruct. It simply meets us. In grief, in joy, in transformation. And perhaps that is why we return to it again and again in our most human moments. It doesn't demand meaning, it just holds space for it. A basin, a river, a mug, a tear. The container doesn't matter. The water always finds a way to make it sacred. Somewhere outside, rain is falling. You might not hear it. It might be miles away, but its rhythm is familiar. That soft percussion on rooftops, windows and sidewalks. The hush of tyres passing through puddles, the faint tick against glass when the world slows down and listens. Rain does something to time. It doesn't stop it, but it softens the edges. Days that might have been filled with noise and urgency become quieter. The light changes, the air thickens, and the water, falling in steady rhythm, becomes not just weather, but a kind of presence. A gentle hand on the shoulder of the day. We don't always notice it when it begins, but we feel it. You might move closer to the window, wrap yourself in something warm, turn off a light and let the grey fill the room. With the rain comes a shift, not just in atmosphere, but in awareness. There's a reason so many people fall asleep more easily when it rains, or why the sound of rain is one of the most downloaded ambient tracks in the world. It soothes, not by distracting you from your thoughts, but by joining them, matching their rhythm, offering a companion that says, it's okay to slow down now. Water doesn't just flow, it surrounds. And in these small everyday moments, it shows up not as force or ritual or miracle, but as comfort. A shower at the end of a long day, a bath drawn without explanation, a cup of tea that warms your hands more than your throat. These aren't extravagant things, they're small, domestic, quiet, but they hold more weight than we sometimes allow, because in each of these moments, water becomes texture, a sensory bridge between the outer world and your inner life. You know this without needing to think about it. The way your shoulders lower as warm water runs down your back, the pause before the first sip of tea, the scent of rain on dry pavement, petrichor they call it, though the word hardly does justice to the feeling it stirs. These are not luxuries. They're reminders. That presence doesn't require grandeur. That comfort can come in something as simple as temperature. Warmth, especially, is a kind of kindness when carried by water. It wraps, cradles, loosens tension without needing to be asked. And cold water, too, has its place. A glass of ice water on a summer afternoon, a plunge into a lake that takes your breath and gives it back clearer, a splash to the face that resets your morning, the cool of a stream across bare feet. Cold water awakens, it sharpens the present moment. Warm water softens it. And between those two, most of your daily encounters with water unfold. Not as drama, but as companionship. It's the steam rising from the sink as you wash dishes, turning a chore into a meditation. It's the droplets that cling to the bathroom mirror after a shower, catching light and disappearing. It's the rhythm of the kettle just before it sings. And it's the way we return to water, again and again in these small rituals without always knowing why. We reach for it when we're tired, when we're overwhelmed, when we need to reset or reflect or simply pause. Not because water demands it, but because it offers that moment so gently that we can't help but accept. It waits without pressure. It offers without condition. And in a world that often feels loud, urgent and fragmented, water reminds us how to be still. A cup of tea, a window streaked with rain, a warm soak and a deep breath. Not all healing needs to be loud. Not all meaning needs to be explained. Sometimes it's enough that the water is warm, that the cup is full, that the rain is falling somewhere nearby, reminding you in the softest way possible that you are held. Water remembers, not in the way a mind does, not with facts or dates or names, but in feeling, in sensation, in echo. There are certain memories we hold that don't come in words or images, they come in the sound of a river, in the taste of cool water after running, in the quiet drip of a faucet in the middle of the night. They arrive like ripples, soft, expanding, impossible to trace to their beginning. You likely have one, a moment when you were a child and rain began to fall. Maybe you stood at the window, forehead pressed to the glass. Maybe you ran into it, arms outstretched, drenched and breathless. Or perhaps you simply lay in bed listening, the soft tapping against the roof filling the room with comfort. That memory may be hard to explain, but it's shaped by water. Water becomes the frame for memories that might otherwise slip away. The lake you visited every summer, the cup of tea your grandmother always brewed, the river walk where someone held your hand, the beach where you watched the waves, saying nothing, but understanding everything that didn't need to be said. These are not dramatic moments, they are quiet, and yet they hold more weight than louder, sharper days. They linger, not because they shout, but because they flow beneath everything else. Water, as metaphor, appears everywhere in our language. We speak of emotions that well up, of thoughts that flow, of grief that comes in waves. We describe people as drowning in sorrow or washed in joy. We say time slips through our fingers like water. We want things to go smoothly. We fear when something feels flooded, murky or dry. These aren't accidents, they're instincts. Because water is how we understand the invisible parts of being alive. Emotion, memory, longing, reflection. You cry, and no one needs to ask what you're feeling. The tears say everything. They aren't just salt and water, they're release. They fall without needing permission. They connect the inner world to the outer one, and in that act, they cleanse. It's no wonder that across cultures, bodies of water become metaphors for the soul. A still lake is a calm mind. A raging sea is turmoil. A stream is a thought in motion. The ocean is the unknown, vast and cradling, terrifying and beautiful all at once. And when we dream of water, it often carries messages we don't fully understand. A wave rising too high, a pool you can't quite reach, a river you must cross. Water in dreams is never just scenery. It's meaning, memory disguised as motion. Even the places we remember most vividly are often defined by water. The smell of the sea on a cold morning, the sound of a kettle boiling, the way sunlight flickers across the surface of a lake. These moments become the texture of remembering not just what happened, but how it felt to be there. And that's what water offers us. Not just hydration or purification, but a language for everything we can't always say, a shape for silence, a form for feelings that refuse to be solid. You might not remember the details of a conversation or the exact words spoken during a moment that mattered, but you might remember that it was raining, that someone handed you a warm cup, that your shoes were soaked, that the river nearby kept flowing even as your world shifted in some quiet, irreversible way. Water doesn't freeze memories in place, it carries them, letting them move, soften, find new meaning over time. What felt like sadness may now feel like peace. What was once overwhelming may now feel like connection. What once passed by unnoticed may now shimmer with quiet importance. This is how water teaches us to remember gently, to let things flow when they must, to hold what we can and release what we can't. And perhaps that's why we always return to it. To the sea, to the shower, to the glass beside the bed, to the faucet, to the rain, to the sound of waves played softly through headphones at night. Not because water fixes anything, but because it holds space for thought, for breath, for memory, for sleep. You, like water, are always moving, always becoming, always shaped by what has passed through you. And still, here you are, clearer for it, softer for it, still flowing. And now, as we near the end of our quiet journey, let's return once more to something simple. Your breath, in and out. Each inhale draws in air moistened by the world, by oceans, by lakes, by exhalations from forests and cities alike. And each exhale carries with it a bit of warmth, a thread of vapour, a quiet release. You might not see it, but it's there, rising softly, returning. You've been listening, imagining, remembering water across all its forms, and in doing so you've joined it, not just in thought, but in being. because the water we've followed, from comet to cloud to tap, is already inside you. You are, as we've said, a body of water, but you are more than that. You're a moment in its journey. The hydrogen in your body is older than Earth, born in the heart of the Big Bang. The oxygen came later, in stars that burned for millions of years and ended in silence and fire. When those atoms found each other, they formed water, just two hydrogens, one oxygen, and that combination has been travelling ever since. Some of it froze in space, some of it fell as rain onto Earth's young crust, some of it hid beneath volcanic rock waiting, and some of it today is moving through your bloodstream, softly, quietly. You don't have to understand every part of that. You only need to feel the wonder of it, that something so old, so far travelled, so foundational, has made a home in you, even for a little while. You are not borrowing this water. You are sharing it, with the sky, with the trees, with people who lived before you, and with those who haven't yet arrived. The water in your glass today may have once fallen over a rainforest canopy. It may have been locked in an Arctic glacier. It may have circled in the belly of a whale, or swallowed in a rice paddy under summer sun. It may have quenched the thirst of someone you've never known long ago. And now, here it is, inside you. Tomorrow it will continue. It will leave you slowly, through your breath, through your skin, through the gentle act of living. And then it will rise again, become cloud, become mist, become part of someone else's story. Water moves, but it doesn't disappear. And neither do you. You are part of this pattern. A single ripple in a very old wave. A whisper of salt and memory and motion. There is no boundary between you and the stream, the rain, the ocean. Only time, only form. Your body knows this, even if your thoughts forget. It knows how to breathe with the planet. It knows how to rest when the tide recedes. You do not need to hold on to anything tightly now. The water will carry it. Whatever remains undone, unspoken, uncertain, it can wait. It will return reshaped. Everything does. So let your shoulders lower. Let your jaw unclench. Let the rhythm of your breath join the rhythm of the tide. And as you settle, whether into sleep or stillness, or simply a softer awareness, know that you are exactly where you need to be, not drifting apart, but returning, always returning, like water. There's nothing left to solve now, nothing to understand or fix or finish. You've followed water from the far edges of space to the soft centre of your being. You've stood in rain, floated in oceans, bathed in warmth, breathed out mist. You've watched it shape planets and carry memories, and now you can let it carry you. Just for a while, let the questions soften, let the thoughts loosen their grip. You don't need to hold them all tonight. Like water, they'll find their way back when it's time. Right now, you are allowed to drift. No direction, no effort, just a quiet surrender to the stillness that waits beyond motion. This moment, the one you're in, is not the end of anything. It's just a pause, a turning of the current, a still pool in a long stream. Even sleep, strange and quiet as it is not an ending. It's a return, the body rests, the thoughts untangle, the breath deepens, and in that quiet descent, the mind continues to float. If you're still awake, that's okay. There's no rush to arrive, sleep doesn't ask for performance, it comes like fog, like evening tide, like the hush after rainfall. All you need to do is stay soft, stay here. You don't need to count anything, or try, you've already done enough. The water will remember where to go, the body will remember how to rest, the breath will continue steady and sure, like waves brushing gently against sand, like ripples fading across a pond after the last stone is thrown. And when you sleep, if you sleep, you'll be held by molecules older than mountains, by rhythms older than language, by the same water that kissed stars and now rests in you. So take one more slow breath. Let it out just a little longer than the last. Feel the quiet in your jaw, your chest, your fingertips. There is nothing you need to do. There is nowhere you need to be, except here, drifting, returning, still. And when you wake, whenever that may be, the water will still be here, waiting, flowing, carrying you gently forward.